This podcast is presented with support from CSL Behring, Grifols, Kedrion, Chiesi, Farming, and Visor. Hello, and welcome to ChronicXTwenties, a podcast from the Immune Deficiency Foundation, which explores living with a rare disease in early adulthood. Today, community members Nick and Riley interview each other on the transition of care from pediatric to adult caregivers, a journey that is notoriously challenging for those with chronic illness. Let's listen.
Hi, welcome to ChronicXTwenties podcast. My name is Riley, and today Nick and I are going to be talking about the transition from pediatric to adult care. And my diagnosis is hyper-IgE, also known as Job syndrome. And Nick, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Nick Sutton. I am diagnosed with X-linked A-gamma globulinemia. It's a mouthful, and that would be the short version of that is XLA. So it's very very rare disease. Only males can get it, and my immune system doesn't make B cells correctly, I believe. So,
Gotcha. Interesting. That's
yes.
actually one that I haven't met anybody yet, so it's nice to meet you.
You as well, yeah. My brother is the only other person I know with it, and I've met one other person with it from another state. So it's very few and far between.
Yeah, I feel that. I haven't met anybody with my exact diagnosis in person, but with PIs, there's a lot of overlap with symptoms and how we have to deal with it. So it
For
is
sure.
really special, like when you make that connection. But
Yeah,
but definitely,
absolutely.
yeah, the community at large really has a lot of like overlap and same interests. So yeah.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, and like you said, we're going to be talking today about the transition from pediatric care to primary care. Um, and I'm sure that's an experience that many people with PI have had,
Mm-hmm.
with having such rare uh, conditions. It's a little more complicated than someone who might not have PI to transition from care to from pediatric care to taking care of things yourself with adult care. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one thing that I think had a like pretty big impact on how I handled my transition was the timing of my diagnosis.
mm,
Um, and like with all of us, the diagnosis time is like very different, and a lot of us go without a diagnosis for a long time. But I was about 16, almost 17.
wow,
So yeah, I was like diagnosed and like started my first steps of primary immune deficiency care. And then pretty quickly was like pushed to adult care.
right.
Yeah. When was your diagnosis?
No, it's interesting you say that. You started to deal with this life at a completely different stage than I did.
Mhm.
I was about 1 years old when I started having symptoms. So I believe the phrase is "think zebra."
Mhm.
When I was in the hospital actually for about a month, they had no idea what was going on, and it this was in the early 2000s. So
Mhm.
um, finally took an immunologist to look back in our family history and see that there was a some sort of immune issue in the past. My two uncles died from what I have, XLA, in the 60s, when not a lot of was known about this disease. So,
Yeah.
um, yep, I've been dealing with this since I was about 1 years old. And a few years later, when my brother was born in about 2004, he was diagnosed with the same thing. So it's definitely a
Hmm.
family legacy at this point, and I find that interesting. I wonder how it is for you that you dealt with this at in your
Hmm.
adolescence rather than having to deal with this your entire life and not really
Yeah.
knowing much else.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like for a long time, it was just kind of like the the pre-diagnosis was because I did suffer from infections um and stuff as a infant and child, but they just
Hmm.
said like immune compromised. They never I I walked the line of like, and I feel like a lot of people feel this of like not being sick enough or just not
Right.
presenting sick enough to where it's like I would look totally fine until I'm like in a major infection. Because I don't spike a fever. Like my
Hmm.
body just doesn't recognize that it's there, so it doesn't react with a fever. So if my mom like took me in being like, okay, like my kid is sick, she has an infection, the first thing they
Right.
check is a fever, and they're like, well, she's fine.
Hmm.
So it was a lot of my mom like really being a huge advocate for just trying to like get a name for
Hmm.
what I was going through because it like you can't get treatment without the diagnosis. So I
Right.
was just on antibiotics a lot. And then like finally getting the diagnosis when I was like 16 or 17 and then being able to start like proper treatment. Um, it, I mean, it's pretty isolating because
Yeah.
I'm the only person I knew for a long time with an immune deficiency, and I'm kind of like the I don't know if I want to use the phrase like patient zero, but like
Right.
as far as my family, I'm the only one. Um,
Hmm.
so it was hard. We didn't have like a history to look back
Right.
on.
Right. That
Um,
that must be hard.
yeah, but as far as like I was so glad that I got that diagnosis at least like right before I went into adult care because it did kind of give me more confidence in being like, okay, this is what I have. I have like better resources to communicate to a doctor instead of just being like, I have this unnamed issue, you
Sure.
know? Yeah, yeah. Because you can definitely bring a lot more like material and specific um specific things to a doctor's office, especially when meeting a new doctor if you have a diagnosis.
Right.
Um, yeah.
And let me backtrack for a minute. Where you from? What do you do for work?
Oh yeah. So I'm from the Seattle, Washington area,
Oh, cool.
and yeah, I just graduated this past summer, and I'm currently looking and applying to lots of jobs,
Okay.
but just haven't had the luck or the like right fit for me quite
Oh
yet.
yeah.
But
It's
yeah.
tough out there right now.
Mhm.
What was your major?
I majored in interdisciplinary arts and sciences.
Okay.
So I got to do, I did a lot of like the core chemistry, math, and biology. But then I also studied a little bit of public policy, philosophy,
Yep.
and some art as well.
Cool.
So like some film classes and stuff. So
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
I have a pretty broad education, but I think that it helps me look at things from a bunch of different angles.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what about yourself?
I'm from Albany, upstate New York, um,
Nice.
and I studied in Philadelphia at Temple University. My master's was actually in public policy.
Nice.
So right now I'm doing disaster recovery work. I'm actually in Houston, Texas,
Oh,
helping
wow.
with the federal grant management stuff for the counties affected by Hurricane Beryl back in the summer.
Hmm.
So my job requires me to travel a lot, which, tying it back
Yeah.
to the primary care thing,
Hmm.
it's proved to be a little difficult. um,
Yeah.
which, I had always known like my situation would be different than others, and I have these serious considerations to take into account when I'm planning my future. But
Hmm.
I have obviously an adult primary care physician now, and an immunologist.
Hmm.
I've been trying to navigate, setting up virtual appointments with them,
Yeah.
um, trying to get home as much as I can to see them because insurance is contingent on seeing the immunologist, at least in my case. So
Hmm.
it's also been difficult getting my medicine. So I infuse immunoglobulin that
Yeah.
always throws me off every 2 weeks. So I've been having to rely on my family actually to help me get that out here because
Oh, wow.
something with the restrictions. I don't really know what it is, but my address changes so much that it's hard
Right.
to just keep switching it with the insurance companies and stuff. So that's definitely proved difficult, and it sucks that it has to be something that I'm stressed about a lot. Making sure I have this life-saving medicine with me all the time,
Hmm.
um, especially when my life requires me to travel, and that's what I love to do.
Right.
It's just always going to be kind of a burden, but I'm trying to navigate that now.
Yeah.
This is my first year in the workforce, so
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm like that's really great work that you're doing and
thank you. Yeah.
um yeah, I love to hear where people with primary immune deficiencies end up because it's
Yes,
like there really is no yes, we have limitations, but I'm always just so impressed with the people in our community, like especially with their want to give back in some way. Like
for
I,
sure. Yep.
yeah. And um, I feel like dealing with the things that we do uh kind of sets us up to be like generous and
Yep.
think of others and especially be considerate of like what is going on with someone that I can't necessarily see from the outside.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
That
think
is.
that your illness had a like impact on what you chose to do as far as your career path and education?
I'd say absolutely. I grew up in a very volunteer oriented family, and having this immune deficiency, and my brother has it as well, and we obviously have the family history
Hmm.
of this, genetic disease. We're just lucky. I think we from a young age just felt very lucky to be here,
Hmm.
and that translated, I think, into my passion for public service and um,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. So yeah, I definitely think having this and dealing with this my whole life has led me to what I want to do career wise. So how about
Yeah.
you?
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like I for a long time was pretty like set on being a like practicing MD immunologist.
Yes.
But
Yep.
as like when I um started going through school and then 2020 hit like midway
Yeah.
through my bachelor's degree.
Hmm.
And I think I mean, for the entire world, it was a moment to kind of like reflect. And I felt like that was just a little bit too focused and honed
Hmm.
in for me. There were other parts um, of myself that I wanted to explore and other parts of like the world, really.
Yeah.
Um, but because I always thought of like applying that sort of energy directly into like back into immunology.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that I also found a lot of different ways to give back to the community through Immune Deficiency Foundation
Yep.
that didn't necessarily require me to have a medical degree. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I think that it definitely like I love science and I love learning how the like systems of the body work, and it's something that we have to be kind of acclimated to in order to communicate what we need for care.
For
Um,
sure.
yeah, so I do think it definitely influenced me, and like the things that I'm really drawn to is a lot of like been applying to a lot of nonprofits,
Yeah, yeah.
or also working like at a plasma donation center because I am also on I do subcutaneous infusions twice a week.
So do I.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, so it's um, just another way of like kind of connecting with the people who support us in such a fundamental way.
That's really
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. And you mentioned that you did you volunteer for the IDF before um
Yeah,
this? Yeah.
yeah. I was fortunate enough to be the lead of the young adult Get Connected group for a
Okay.
few years. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Um, Yeah, it was a really formative experience for me. It actually, because I took a break from school
Hmm.
and like meeting other people who deal with the same things I do and seeing that they were still like going to school and being successful, that really inspired me to like re-enter my education path. So yeah, it's been like with I feel like I've benefited almost more than the people in my group maybe, but yeah, I'm like I really appreciate them a lot, and I think that like being able to connect with people who have the same struggles as me and same perspective has been really helpful.
It's important. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I was on the teen council. I was a teen
Nice.
council member for a few years, and then I actually did my college internship with the Immune Deficiency Foundation. I worked in their public policy department,
Oh,
so that
cool.
was really cool. It's just
Yeah.
cool because I mean we used to go to the conferences and stuff as a kid,
Hmm.
and I feel like I've been involved with this organization my whole life at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah, for sure. Um,
Um,
sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. Uh, I was just gonna ask, how do you kind of balance like disclosing your condition as far as professional and like personal relations? And has that
Yeah.
changed as you went from a child to adult?
So, um, I remember as a child, I feel like I was sort of embarrassed to have an immune deficiency. It was obviously very different than other people, or my peers and stuff, but
Hmm.
I feel like I've had um, the benefit, I guess, of dealing with this my whole life, whereas a lot of people in the PI community do not have that, you know, that entire life's experience with PI.
Hmm.
So it's given me a lot of time to just become okay with having it and dealing with life, and this just being a part of my life. I don't mind
Yeah,
talking about it or telling people about it at all. Usually comes up pretty early on in conversation if making a new friend or um,
right.
and of course with the nature of my job, it's important, I think, to at least give a heads up to my employer that there's times this is like, uh, I need to do this. I need to
Hmm.
infuse. So, um, I don't know. I'm curious to see if that's different for you because you didn't grow up with
Yeah.
it, really.
Yeah. I didn't really start disclosing my like my condition and my illness socially until I was probably like 22.
Hmm.
Um, because I just always I felt like I could kind of live my life, quote unquote, like normally. And
Yeah.
so I didn't necessarily need to bring it up to people. And it felt like
Right.
something that was so like so personal and just like hard to explain. So I
Hmm.
avoided it for a long time. But it was mostly after, I mean, especially after the pandemic, it was just something that like I felt like I had to tell people
Right.
because I wanted them to be extra careful around me.
Hmm.
Um, and like through that, I feel like I built more confidence to be able to speak about it
Right.
socially. And then I was able to like say what I needed as far as work settings that like yeah, just being like, hey, I have these doctor's appointments that I can't miss. Like
Exactly.
they're important. Like the immunologist only has so many dates open. Like
Hmm.
um yeah, so it building that confidence to be able to just speak about it socially and just be more open about how it affected me has translated to me being able to ask for what I need from employers, definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
that's great. I'm glad you were able to build up the confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, so here's another thing that I've been worried about lately. I'll be 26 in December, so
Hmm.
I'll be off my parents' health care, and I will
Right.
have to figure out what the best plan is for me financially. 'Cause,
Hmm.
these medicines are not cheap. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, have you dealt with anything like that so far, or not yet?
Yeah. So I'm 27, so I've
Okay.
been off my parents' insurance for about almost 2 full years now.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel very lucky to um have my like through Medicare and Medicaid have
Okay.
my medicine paid for like while I'm in this weird unemployment limbo.
Right, right.
Um yeah, but it's so thankfully I've been able to have my medication paid for that way.
That's
But it
great.
is yeah, it is hard because it's different in every state and
Yeah.
yeah, so it is pretty difficult. And I'm like with your insurance is probably going to be through your employer.
Right, right.
Yeah, so that will, I think that'll be a little bit easier than trying to navigate like um, state care, but it all comes with its challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like picking out a plan because that was something that um, my parents kind of involved me in when I started
Hmm.
to get older was talking about like, hey, this is how we kind of choose our insurance plan based on like what's going to be most beneficial to getting your meds.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. And unfortunately, like a lot of the times it involves a high deductible.
Hmm.
Um, but then after you like finish that deductible, then things are taken care of. But it's
Right.
just that like upfront the first 2 months, you might be like paying for your meds out of pocket. And that can be really scary. And that is not like viable for some people.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
yeah, yeah. So it has been difficult, just like trying to trying to navigate, okay, where can I apply that's going to actually offer me insurance? Like
Right.
that's a whole
Yeah,
other
and
thing.
that's I mean, that was always hammered into me by my parents. You need to get a job that, is going to pay for your medicine. So that was
Right.
always something I had to be cognizant of when
Hmm.
choosing a job. And, I think things are pretty up in the air right now for a lot of people and their employment.
Right.
So it's a lot to think about,
Hmm.
especially for people coming off their parents' insurance and trying to navigate how they're going to take care of that solo.
Right.
So
Hmm. Yeah, I wish that it was a little bit more uniform of a like system or experience because then I feel like we could kind of talk a little bit more about like strategies, but it is
yeah,
so different for each
for
person
everyone.
and
Yep.
each yeah, like each insurance plan that's offered and there's so many. Um yeah, yeah. how has your perspective on long-term health planning changed since kind of like taking over your own adult care?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been dealing with this for, 25 years ish
Hmm.
now. I transitioned to subcutaneous injections when I was about 12.
Yeah,
So I've been doing my own infusions since around, 12 years old, over 10 years.
right.
So that I feel like has prepared me to take care of it myself. It was a challenge, I think, in the beginning when I went to college. I went to college out of state, so I had to
Hmm.
navigate the shipments and, getting my infusion done on time without my mom, harping on me to
Right.
do so.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that was one, but I've been, traveling and in school and stuff for, I'd say almost 7 years now.
Hmm.
I transitioned to adult care, I think when I was 19 or 20.
Hmm.
And luckily, I was able to get my family's doctor to take me on. He doesn't handle my
Yeah.
immune stuff.
Hmm.
My immunologist, excuse me, I've had him since I was about 15. So
Nice.
I feel like I'm prepared and kind of just used to it at this point to taking care of my own um,
Right.
situation. I think the biggest challenge that I can foresee is obviously the insurance. I really
Hmm.
haven't decided where I want to, hang my hat and live
Right.
in the
Yeah.
U.S. yet. So um, uh, at that point, I'll have to find a new primary care, a new immunologist and stuff. So
Hmm.
like I said, it's just an added thing we, as people with PI, have to think about. And um, luckily, I've been dealing with this for so long. It's kind of just second nature to me. But
Right.
um, how has your perspective changed since you
Yeah.
became an adult?
Um, I think I honestly went through a little bit of a rebellious phase where I was like, I've taken like such good care of myself. Like
Hmm.
I can kind of let myself kind of like be a little bit more free, like do the things that my friends are doing.
Yes.
Um, and I learned my lesson. Um, Mostly like I how I explain it is I feel like the consequences of like just general like 20 something decisions that we make, those hit me like exponentially faster than my friends. So it's like
Yes.
if I feel like I've learned my lessons and understood that like yeah, like maybe when you're in your 20s, like yeah, you can drink sometimes, but it it doesn't quite feel great like the morning after. And
Yeah.
like
Yep.
it's not like that. Then I have the perspective of it's not that great for my immune system. And
Right.
so you just kind of like I almost felt like when I was in my 20s I went through another like teenage rebellion when I finally like had control over
Hmm.
everything, because I felt like I didn't have control for a long time, having my parents so involved in my care.
That's
Um,
interesting you say that.
yeah,
I felt that way for a long time too. So I wonder if that's
yeah,
just kind of a uniform feeling amongst people with PI.
yeah, because like it can feel hard to like have privacy and like
Yeah.
independence when like you do have your family so involved with your care. And
Right. Right.
it like I'm so thankful for that, but there is that flip side of like you kind of want to take care of it on your own. You kind of want to
Yeah. Yeah.
have agency over all of and any of your choices.
Right.
And yeah, so I think that as I just kind of like aged through my 20s and matured, I kind of regained that like more careful perspective of my long-term health of like, I do want to take care of myself. Like, yes,
Right.
I have things that I have to do, but everybody does. So I'll
Exactly.
just, yeah. So just like kind of accepting that again. And I feel like we all kind of go through phases of where we can just be so frustrated of our circumstance,
Yep.
um and then something reminds you of like, okay, like this is how it is, but there's so many good things that have happened, like
Right.
because I'm in this community. And yeah, so I feel like I had a bit of a struggle with like caring so much about my long-term health.
Hmm.
But I came back around to being like, okay, yeah, this is important. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it is.
I just wanted to be honest, because there is like, you have to be so responsible from such a young age when you deal with
Yes,
this. Um, that I don't want to like have the myth that we're all perfectly taking our meds on time, all perfectly taking care
absolutely
of
not.
ourselves. Like, yeah.
I still miss my doses on a weekly
Yeah,
basis. So
right.
yeah, yeah, no, that's I'd say that is a myth.
Hmm.
And yeah, it is this balance. I mean, like you said, it's your whole life you've had to be so strict, and your family's probably been strict on you to
Hmm.
get all your stuff together. And I definitely went through a rebellious phase as well in college and
Yeah,
stuff. But yeah, um, trying to just find that balance of taking care of yourself and also trying to be as normal as you can and have fun. Um,
right.
it's definitely been something I've dealt with
Yeah,
throughout my journey with PI. So
yeah. Um, what kind of strategies have you developed for um managing your fatigue and stress like over these things? Um,
yeah, um, I will get back to you on that. I don't think I've quite figured that out yet, but
yeah.
um,
No, it's totally
I
fair.
feel like I mean I don't know if it's because of the immune deficiency or what, but I feel most of the time I'm tired and
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
addicted to caffeine, and
Yeah.
I
I
don't
feel
know.
that.
I think there's definitely a lot of anxiety that comes with this kind of life, having this
Hmm.
for so long. Definitely struggled with anxiety, uh,
Yeah.
still do. Um, but yeah, it's that's kind of my priority right now is to
Hmm.
find these coping mechanisms, and coping with stress and
Right.
fatigue for sure. If you have any suggestions, I'd be
Yeah.
very happy
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah, I'm guilty of the caffeine consumption as
Yeah.
well. It's hard to stay off of. I love my coffee,
Hmm.
but yeah, I feel like a lot of what I do as far as trying to manage my my fatigue or stress is trying to find and like connect with my creative outlets.
Hmm.
And also just like I'm I'm a big person of like just sitting out in nature for a little bit will always
Yeah.
make me feel better. And I know those are things that like uh require time and space,
Right.
like
Right.
that some people don't have. Um, but yeah, it's just like trying to take those moments to really like check in with yourself. One thing that I've been trying to be better at is having like a nighttime routine
Mm.
where like especially getting off the phone
Yeah.
earlier, like
Yeah.
and just like I usually take that time to journal or listen to music.
Right.
Um, so just something that's just for me, and that
Uh-huh.
like I don't have to really share it, so there's no pressure of it being perfect. Yeah, so that's kind of my strategy, is really trying to plug into those things that I feel like feed me back.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good
And I
advice.
mean, you seem to be very like driven in your career, and I think that's awesome. And like you probably feel I would hope that you feel like rewarded by that, but
Yeah.
it is important to also have things that aren't like just related to your work that
Right.
you
Yeah.
can, yeah, that you can kind of just have for yourself. And I
For
think
your,
it kind of goes back to just having like agency and independence. Just doing something like
yep.
strictly for yourself for even 5 minutes can feel really good.
I agree with that. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people will find like a version of exercise that fits um their body's needs. Like I don't do a whole lot of like high impact stuff.
Yeah.
So I I've found that like yoga and Pilates are things that are good
Hmm.
for me, whereas like other people, like I was on a call earlier with another person from our PI community, and they do like bodybuilding. So I'm like, that's awesome.
Interesting.
Like
Yeah.
I didn't like that's not something I ever would have considered, but that's really cool that that lines up with like how he likes to relieve stress. And yeah. And
That's really
I don't
cool.
know
Yeah.
about with traveling, it might be kind of hard to um like specific uh have those specific like hobbies and times, because if you're
Yeah.
traveling a lot, you might not have like the gym membership or just like a space all your own to do stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, I I think my situation's a little out there, and not probably relatable to a lot of people, but yeah, it's that the job itself is definitely hard to find, like you said, hobbies. And it's also hard without a support system, you know. I mean, my
Hmm.
entire family and friends, everyone's back east, and I'm down here in Houston, Texas for 6+ months. So
Right.
um, I would definitely say my situation might be an outlier for that, but um,
Yeah.
still trying to find that balance of relieving stress, anxiety, and also taking care of myself and making sure I'm on time with my infusions and stuff like that.
Thank you for listening to Chronic 20s from the Immune Deficiency Foundation. Your support of the Immune Deficiency Foundation helps make sure people like Nick and Riley have the education, resources, and advocacy they deserve. To learn more about the Immune Deficiency Foundation or to get involved, visit primaryimmune.org/donate.